Hello everybody. We saw in the last video, in the previous video, that there are 4 theological reasons that the Almighty God cannot dwell in heaven. You can read yourself. You could see point number 4. Also, if God were there, Lucifer would have never made a revolt, because he is evil but not fool. Just make a revolt to lose his privileges, Lucifer is not fool at that extent. Further to the previous theological reasons, there are also logical reasons that God cannot dwell in heaven. To introduce that, we can see that we have only one future. We have only one past, and we also have only one real future. Also, this is one. And that future also includes the God's decisions, because they are embedded in it. You can see here the future of mankind is represented, and that future also, that real future, that real one future, we have only one future before us, we can see that there are interventions that have been decided by God. Those are represented by red stripes. But of course, only God can make his decisions. What does it mean? That this is very important, because it means that God had to make before all his decisions, and only after that he could know the whole future, including his decisions. Therefore, after making all his decisions that he had to do to make those decisions, God could see the future for the first time. Making all his decisions is an enormous task, is an enormous amount of work. And then after that, God could see the future for the very first time. And this is a moment of paramount importance. Here, you can see God can see for the first time the future, including the interventions decided by God. But what happens? It happens that God, this is very important, does not make any mistakes. He never makes mistakes. What does it mean? It means that that future, at that very moment when God sees the future, that future is frozen, is absolutely frozen, because God does not make any mistakes. No second thoughts, no mistakes, and that future is frozen in its slightest details because of the power of God. He does not make any mistakes. And that future is frozen. You can see, this is the frozen future for the first time before the eyes of God. And it should be stressed that he has a perfect knowledge of that future. He has an absolute perfect knowledge of that future in the smallest details. Therefore, to make that frozen future happen, the presence of God, surprising, is not necessary, because that future is frozen. That frozen future can be automatically made true by His power and, of course, by our free will actions. God knows also our free will actions, what they will be. Therefore, the God's work was absolutely completed. And this implied a separation of the Creator from his masterpiece. Like a sculptor, after making his work, there is a separation, because that work is, the artist's work is completed. So also here there is a separation of the Creator from his masterpiece. So what happened? It happened that God just said, so be it, to his power. The power knew, which is a thing, knew in the smallest detail that frozen future, to make that frozen future true, automatically. A separation was thus unavoidable. Here we can see, for instance, something absurd would occur if God, despite that, he decided to further interact with the mankind. So we have absurd situations 5 and 6, further to the previous theological reasons. What happens? That the predictions are true. The predicted future is frozen, and it means that he cannot modify that one future. He cannot do that anymore. He couldn't even change the weather. And reason number 6, surely God has no interest at all to leave that frozen future acting himself as an automaton. Here you have point number 5, you can read it yourself. He made a prediction, the very first prediction of the future, and now, of course, cannot modify anything of that prediction. You can read yourself. The prediction was made for good, and he cannot change anything anymore. And the point number 6, he cannot act himself in that future as an automaton. We make an example of what would happen. We are in heaven, a grand dinner, and the Almighty God is there with us. This is the glasses example. Here we have a grand dinner, God is there, and in front of anyone there are a glass of water and a glass of wine. Here we have 7 p.m., and God knows the real future. And he knows that God, he will raise the glass of wine exactly at 8 p.m. because he knows the future. Now it's time 8 p.m. and of course any normal person can do whatever he likes with the 2 glasses in front of him. At 8 p.m. You are completely free to do whatever you like with the two glasses. But not everybody can do that. Why? Because unlike the others, the Almighty God never makes mistakes. And therefore, his previous prediction of the future must exactly come true. Therefore, at 8 p.m., what happens? That now God cannot touch the glass of water and cannot delay even 1 second in taking the glass of wine. This is absurd. God should be obliged to comply on the second. This is absurd. And this would happen if God were in heaven with us. This simply means that we can't live together with the Almighty God. As I said before, a separation was unavoidable. But if God can stay with us, then where is he? Because, of course, Jesus talks to the Almighty God in the Gospels. So, where is the Almighty God? God is in another dimension, where God, from our point of view, God is at work in the past, is still at work in the past. Jesus said, "The world has not known you," because he is in the past. And God is in the past perfectly almighty from there.